I'm the CEO of the Men's Development Network, founder member of the Men's Development Network that for the last good number of years has been out working in a very particular way in supporting and encouraging men to live a better quality of life. Better lives for men, better lives for all is our motto. And that's all I need to say about this man. Better lives for men, better lives for all. His life is certainly about it. Every day I think he gets up. So, Alan, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much. It was great to hear all the positivity here this morning. And one of our phrases, our basic starting point is that men are good. And one of our directors, Peter Kieran, some of you may remember, he used to be childcare manager in the HSE in these parts, and always directs people who quarrel with that comment about men, that men are good, towards photographs of men and women holding their baby sons soon after birth. And when you look at men and we're that age, we certainly are good. And let's remember that about men, as when we're all ages, that is actually how we arrive in the world, and that is actually basically how we are. Lots of things happen. Noel talked about the gender effects of what we pick up from that point of birth onwards in our lives, and how it can give us supportive information, but it can also give us information that confuses us and mixes us up and has us doing things that aren't helpful for ourselves and for others. And then that we're not, part of the message is that we're not allowed or supposed to talk about those things. We've been going 15 years in the Men's Development Network. We found it very useful for men to sit down and talk honestly and openly with each other in our own time and at our own speed. So there's nothing enforced about this or anything like that, but it is very, very helpful. And what we've brought out today, what we're launching here today with George's help, is this booklet which is being passed around at the moment, 7 Key Questions for Men. And Lorcan had some of these up on the PowerPoint earlier on. And going through this, there are 7 questions here, which, and 2 of which you've answered already in the workshops here just now. And they start off with how are you, and what's going well and what's not going well. And the great thing about starting from a positive place is that it reminds us of our goodness and also about what we're doing well in our lives, which is always our starting point in any of this work. But also, as men, part of those gender messages that Noel talked about that we pick up is that we're not actually allowed to celebrate our goodness or the value of what we do or our love for our partners or our children. And men often hold back on being positive about ourselves and our relationships and what we do in the world. And that's part of where we shut down. And the other side of it then is where there are difficulties, the bit about what's not going well, we're equally discouraged from talking about those. Now the reality is that when we do talk about both of those things, they enhance our lives. We get a better sense of ourselves when we talk about what's going well, because we're talking about ourselves, and it's like a review or a reminder to ourselves that we're doing well in our lives. When we're talking about what's not going well, it allows us to share with somebody else the pressures that we might be under. George talked about fear there, Noel talked about it earlier, some people talked about it in the 3 presentations as well. And fear is often what stops us doing things, but it's also often what stops us talking honestly to each other, because slagging, for instance, is a huge tradition among Irish men. We often get lots of fun out of it, but sometimes it stops us actually being honest with each other because we're fearful or we're afraid of being slagged about something that we're feeling vulnerable about or fearful about. And after that review, and this review is like, it's a personal review, but it's also like there are lots of models in business or in any organisation that you're in where you talk about, well, what have we done well this year and what might we do differently or change or what didn't go well. So these are such a standard things that we do as humans anyway. In this case, we're saying, look, it's really useful for men to do it. It's useful for a successful organisation to do it. It's very useful for men to do it. And then we go into, okay, so what do you think, having done that review, what do you think you need to do? What sort of support do you need to get to do that? And what's a step you could take towards doing it? And to give you one example, when we started the Men's Development Network 15 years ago, we had about 10 groups going around. We concentrated in the southeast first, and we had about 10 men's development groups going in the southeast, and there was one man in one of those who wanted to become a mechanic. He was about in his mid-30s, and he'd left school at 12. And so he identified that as what he wanted to do, having looked at what was going well in his life, what was not going well in his life. And he went down to the local garage where he thought he might get taken on. And it took him about 2 weeks of going down there on a Saturday and standing, looking in at the guy he wanted to talk to, and coming back to the group each week after that, because he was too nervous to go and ask him. And talking about what went well, he got himself at least down to the forecourt. And what didn't go well, he got too fearful about stepping over the edge of the forecourt and walking over to the guy and asking. And by going through that and working on, and in this case, in this example, it was actually a physical step, and then another step he needed to take to get into the office to talk to the guy. And by going through that series of questions, he eventually worked up enough courage, but he also realized that it was okay for him to be shaking and to be red with embarrassment as he walked in to ask, could he be taken on as an apprentice at the age of 33, as he was at the time, and start learning to be a mechanic. And so he eventually did it. So they actually have a very powerful, in a very simple way, a very powerful ability, these questions, to help men to achieve our goals and get our lives the way we want them to be. He did 3 months as a mechanic, gave it up, and went to college instead, having reviewed that and gone through the 7 questions again. So that's what we're launching here today. I think you'll find it useful in your work, whatever you do with men, or whatever you're doing as a provider, a service provider, or an agency. It's well worth using these work with men, using them for yourselves as the service providers in relation to your work with men, and then for us men ourselves to use them in our lives. So George, I'd like to ask you to launch this booklet for us now. Thanks very much.
Well, now I have to tone the voice down a little bit to get, the proper tone, proper volume, whatever. Just on, I won't say reviewing the book, but that would be completely unfair. I've received the book this morning, and the points that I see in the book, what I would call it, just as an old fool like myself, it's just it creates awareness. And once we're aware in life, well then we can actually do something about it. And awareness is very, very important. And the little fears and whatever. Now, I'm just going to make 2 points, and then I'm going to shut up and I'm going to get my dinner. Okay, Dave and I are absolutely delighted to be here and thrilled to be. We were speaking about this for weeks, and Lauren, thank you and all the people involved who made it possible for us to be here. We're absolutely delighted. And you could say that and say, well, we said our piece and we ticked the box. We genuinely believe that we're absolutely thrilled to be here because we work with young people who become older and then become men and then become blah blah blah, but men become old and never become good. That's an old saying. Now I'm going to make 2 points. Hugely into, used to farm, still go down in the field and do a little bit of farming, and might be cow calving, and might be animal street riding, and blah blah blah. And we look at, we love nature, so anyone who has the opportunity to us, I think Limerick was looking out through the window here. It's beautiful, the colours out there today are absolutely magnificent. But it seems the weapons of mass distraction, who are a necessity, sometimes have taken away the beauty that's around us. I call them weapons of mass distraction. And then I went on a journey, and I was watching television last week, and I saw this journey, most amazing sight out in the Serengeti, 1.5 million wildebeest, and they're moving across the Serengeti. There was the young ones that you could identify because they were small. They were protected by their man and the dad. Not so much the dad because sometimes he's hunting or whatever like that, because he's doing what's natural to him. Okay? He's called an outlier. He has a different role in life. And they come to the great river. And in order to get food and survive in life, they must cross the river. But the grass behind them is finished. Now they know that there are dangers lurking in the river, as you know yourself, because I know that everyone that you're looking up at me has seen it before. And they know that they have to cross the river in order to survive. We have to cross through the journey of life in order to survive. But we're going to have casualties. And what we're trying to do, and the likes of Alan and all the brilliant organisations here to do, is minimise the casualties for you and our children. But then we get the whole boy. I call him ho boy, or a ho girl, for want of a better word, and they'd say, I am adult because I look adult and I can get across the river myself. And on the way across the river, Mr. Crocodile Dundee comes up, and Yumsy Yumsy. That was the drugs one, the crocodile drug. Then we have the drink one, and then we have whatever one you want to put on it. They will actually take you. Now, we will survive as a race, absolutely, for sure. So we're trying to minimise the casualties for all our young people, and you. I was bullied in school. You? Bullied? You're a hardy looking whore. No problem saying to you. Also no problem saying to each and every one of you, there's nothing you can do for Dave, Glennie and I to stop loving you. What about the whole word love? You're not allowed to say love anymore. Fell in the vocational school and went for a set of reporting you to the fucking guards. I says to you, I go down with you, sorry Alan for doing, but we're creating just an awareness here, sorry your stuff. And I don't want to take away anyone's position at all, I really, sorry, you know. And I said, tell you what I do, I go down with you and the host to do a report. No sir, when did this incident happen? In the class hall, sir. And I'll arrange then for all you to come up and see me in Portage, because I called sensitive young fella, I loved him. Last point. There's a physical aspect to life. There's a mental aspect to life. There's an emotional aspect to life. There's a sexual aspect to life. O'Connor said sexual up and then escorting. Fuck's sake, we're going to be out the paper next week. And the most important one to me, for the journey that I was on, and I would not have survived without it, is my spiritual my little bit that I do. So I want to leave you with 2 words before launching this brilliant book with you. And listen, this is going to start a huge journey for you. Love and spirituality and friends will get you a long, long way. Thank you, sir.